Welcome to the Tower Yoga Podcast, where we dive deep into the heart of yoga and community. Come along with us as we explore the transformative power of yoga, share insights, and inspire one another on this journey of life. I'm Kellee Williams, and I'm your host and the co-founder of Tower Yoga. Thank you for joining our yoga community. Welcome into everyone who's listening. I'm really excited for today to be here with Lee Herrick. He is California's 10th Poet Laureate, and he has a new book coming out called In Praise of Late Wonder. We were fortunate enough for him to ask us if he could do a book launch in the Lotus Room, which is so super exciting. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's happening on October 18th. So I just figured it would be a really good time to sit down and have an interview with you with him, so that way we can all get to know him a little bit more before the book launch happens. So welcome in. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, and I want to get into it. But before we dive into your new book, I'd love for listeners to get to know you a little better. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you discovered your passion for writing, for poetry? Yeah, anything else you want us to know about you?
Sure. So first, Kellee, thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to be with you, and really grateful for you all letting me use the space for the book launch. So it's just one of my favorite places in town. So it's just got a great feel in the room. So I'm looking forward to that. So let's see about myself. I've lived in Fresno now for about 28 years. I moved here in early 1997 when I was offered a teaching position at Fresno City College. But long before that, I was born in Korea and adopted when I was about 10 months old. And I often start there because it seems natural chronologically, but also it was just such a formative part of my life, being adopted from Korea, brought to a new country, raised in a white family in the East Bay. So I grew up in Danville in the East Bay. And then when I was about 8, we moved to Modesto, where I attended public schools and went to college up in that area. And, I was writing the whole time. I think as a child, I always was drawn to really 3 things that when I look back on it were a big part of my life and have remained a big part of my life. One was soccer, not quite yoga, which I have discovered can be equally, if not more, challenging and rewarding. But for me, soccer was a huge part of my life. I played all through school and all 4 years of college. So I was always very physical and maybe not the best soccer player, but really loved the sport and how it made me feel. The other thing that was a big part of my life early on was music, and still is. My sister makes fun of me because, lovingly makes fun of me, because when I was a kid, there was this radio show on every Sunday called Casey Kasem's American Top 40. And I would sit there and write down every song in the country, the top 40 songs, and try to remember the lyrics and try to learn how the songs were written. Later I discovered, in high school, when a lot of anger was surfacing for me, a lot of my adoption things were starting to surface. So I listened to a lot of punk music and rap music. And this is sort of a long way of saying how I arrived at poetry and language, which is really the third thing that's always been a part of my life. I just loved books. I loved reading. I had some great teachers. And so writing for me was a natural way to try to get some of the things that were compressing on me or sort of weighing on my spirit and on my psyche and on my thinking. Poetry was just this open field where I could be messy and creative and imaginative and sort of free myself from those things. So I just kept with it, or it kept with me, as we say. So over the years, I've just been writing, and, most recently I was appointed California Poet Laureate by a committee and uh, by the governor. And so that's been a joy. So I'm really excited about the book and very grateful. I feel pretty joyful about things right now.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing. And like what I hear in those three things that you communicated is movement and music, which I imagine you were really connected to the lyrics and then writing. And I feel like the movement piece, there's a way to experience poetry, but somatically, like in your body, it's a way of feeling the words. And then you got to, with the music, listen and be moved even by the like vibrations that are like coming through, in addition to like being connected to words,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. And then through then being able to kind of write in your own way after reading and listening to the music and moving. It seems natural that you would get into like synthesizing all of that and then putting your own like words to it all those things seem like it's just such a like sacred trinity of of things
Mm-hmm.
to do to help you sort of process what was
Mm-hmm.
happening and what happened. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that
yeah. I mean,
that seems beautiful.
yeah, it's very much like that. I think poetry, and most arts, if not all the arts, but for me especially, poetry is very physical or visceral, um, and sort of a whole body and mind experience at times, at least when it's the best. Like even if I read a poem, but especially when I write a poem, you do feel a little changed. So
Mhm.
yeah,
It's
yeah, I like
very
what you.
moving, very, very moving. And it's cool. We have, different stories so far as I can hear, but I went through, I can sort of resonate in the sense that I went through a lot in those like early teen years of trying to kind of understand myself, my place in the world. It was there one, and I got really into like punk and things like that, and I was starting to try to like write poetry. It was like really horrible, and actually I would like go to what now is the Lotus Room, but was the space behind the review coffee, and I would go to poetry slams and things like that when I was like 14, 15. And
Mm,
so yeah, there's a connection, and I can just so like viscerally like remembering like reading like Mary Oliver for the first time or things like that where, I'm like, I don't have to be good. What?
mhm, mhm,
Like, and I could feel it in my whole body. And that's how I was like, this is truth. I don't know up
mhm,
from down right now because I'm like 15, 16 on Prozac, like all, whatever. But
mhm,
I
mhm,
feel something when I listen to this song or when I read these words, and it feels like truth. And it's the only thing that can orient me right now. So,
mhm, mhm,
um,
mhm.
yeah. And then, of course, like it has to move through somehow. So it's great that there's, physical activities to do that are encouraged when you're that age,
Mhm.
because it does need to move through. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, Kelly. I mean, I think so many people, my guess is that so many people have some version of your story or our stories where they were experiencing these kinds of things when they were young or still. And yeah, I think the how you're describing those times and those emotions and how music and how different things made you feel. I think you may have heard how America, whether it's the healthcare system or our media or any other things, are sort of structured to keep us unwell. There's an economic benefit from sickness. And one thing I
Mhm.
love about the arts and what my best friend tells me I should think about doing, which is yoga, is that there's no economic driver towards other people suffering, but it's kind of the complete opposite. And that is very liberating. So for people who are in that, whether it's a real heightened time of need or it's sort of maintenance, or it's just inspiration and joyful in their life. I'm glad that your place is there, and Fresno's got a wonderful poetry community. So
Hmm.
there are a lot of good things going around too.
Yeah, there are. And thank you. Yeah, like honestly, I feel like my greatest, greatest joy could be that someday, I know it's like a big dream, but that people, I mean, we need community and like we need to gather. And I think that's part of obviously like, what we're doing here. And yoga is a beautiful practice, and the asana helps us move, like we were talking about. But I think about that sometimes. Like, what if we weren't needed? Like,
Mm,
what if people didn't need to come and be like, oh, the best part of my day, which is, I'm glad to be here for that and like the process. But I do, when I, have a little time and space, sometimes I think, oh my gosh, that would be really cool. And I remember when I was in Ayurvedic school, are you familiar with Ayurveda at all?
not too much.
It's it's a ancient Indian like medical system, like a wisdom tradition. And
Right.
I remember learning that their doctors, like way, way, way back in the day, they got paid when everyone in the village was well. So they
Mm-hmm.
had incentive to keep everyone well. That's how they
Mm-hmm.
made the best living. And I remember hearing that and it shook me. My brain was like, what? So
Mm-hmm.
just,
Mm-hmm.
commenting on something you
Yeah.
brought up, it's just so interesting. So I think about what if we weren't needed?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
but for now we are, and I'm happy to like be here and holding it down, but
Well, I mean,
that would be something.
it's admirable, Kelly, because I mean, you're doing it and holding it down and doing those things, but also that you have the larger vision of others' wellness aside from your personal or professional benefit of doing the good work that you enjoy. I mean, I think it's fundamentally different just between countries and cultures. But we could probably go on this for a long time. But
We could.
um,
Yeah, we could.
you got me thinking about these other organizations that I've done some work with during my term. One is a group in Washington D.C. called the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness. The other is the Creative Aging Symposium.
Wow.
And even locally, I just spoke and did a workshop at the Fresno Boys and Girls Club. And so there's all these little kids writing poetry as they're going between basketball practice
Uh,
and school. So yeah, it's inspiring.
that's so cool. So you did mention that you have the great joy of being named California's 10th Poet Laureate, and it's a really, really huge honor. You're also the first Asian American I read to hold this title. So what's that journey been like for you?
It's been incredible. It's not anything I was aspiring to or was expecting, but I was nominated. And there was quite a process. It was probably 6-7 months of different steps. And but long story short, the governor appointed me in late November 2022. He actually came to Fresno into my classroom with his partner Jennifer Siebel Newsom, which was a complete shock, and it was great to have them here. But it's been great. It's great working with the governor's office, the California Arts Council. I've been to schools of all levels, public and private, literary festivals, museums, a few national parks. I've been to state prisons, and as I like to say, they are Californians too. It's been joyful. It's been very joyful. I've been in, of course, the cities, but I could go to a town of 1,000 people I'd not heard of, and 30 people of the 1,000 will be there at the library for a poetry reading. And half of those are writing their own poems. So it's been incredible. I feel like it's a position of service. Anytime I can advocate for poets and poetry, I'm happy to do it. And as the first Asian American, I feel like there could have been one before me. I feel like I hope I won't be the last, but I know how these things go. You know, I know
Mhm.
how can I put it? Typical appointments and visibility and leadership positions, they aren't the most diverse in any way you can think of. But I'm
Mhm.
very grateful. I don't think about it a lot, but I'm I'm humbled and proud, and it's been really nice. People will come up to me and tell me what it means to them, and that's meaningful for me. Hearing somebody's story about their family, what it means to have someone in the position. So
Mm.
I feel really honored and joyful with the position.
I love that. And joy is so needed in our world right now. It really, really is.
Yeah.
And I I remember when the governor came, because my husband works at Fresno City College. He's an instructor there as well.
Hmm.
And he went to that and he invited me to come, but I think I had something going on here. And so I couldn't go. But he went and told me how
Mm,
awesome it was. And that's when I first became aware of you and your work. And yeah,
mm,
he said that was a really cool
yeah.
thing at the college there. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we feel
I'm
really
glad he
proud
was able
that
to
we
make
have we feel really proud
it.
that we're like, and he works at Fresno City College, and yeah.
That's another part of it too. Yeah, I was glad he was able to make it. And um, another little first is I don't think there has been a California Poet Laureate that has taught at the 2-year college level or at a community college. And I'm really proud of that. I attended Modesto Junior College. I was pretty confused about most things and trying my best in classes, but soccer was the biggest part of my life then. So teaching at
Mhm,
Fresno City College, I feel very fortunate to be doing. But it's been great, and as you may know, or some of your listeners might know, Fresno's got as notable and deep and rich a poetry community as anywhere in the world, I would argue. I mean, I've traveled and read in most major cities in the US, and anywhere I go, people will ask me, what is it like to be a poet in Fresno? Do you know Juan Felipe Herrera and things like that? So
yeah.
I feel very, very grateful. And with joy, I mean, I'll I'll say I'm not the only one. It's hard not to get some residual joy if you are around or if you've read Juan Felipe's work, who just won a
Ah,
MacArthur Genius Grant. You might have seen,
yeah.
so we're thrilled about that.
Mhm,
But it's kind of a hard earned place. To me, it doesn't mean you're smiling all the time or you know you're always positive even. It's more
mhm,
foundational to me that sort of for me has come from making it through some very difficult things. And then joy
mhm,
is harder to take away as opposed to happiness, which can change on a dime.
mhm,
Joy is much more foundational to me.
mhm.
And that's some of what poetry has helped me with. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I feel that. And
Hmm.
so you still teach at Fresno City College. You're actively teaching, and then you kind of have you're writing and maybe
Mm.
traveling, like you said, to these
Yeah.
different places. So you have a full schedule.
Yeah, it's full. I mean, I always like to think everybody's busy. We all get 24 hours. I'm not trying to outdo anyone, but yeah, I'm busy. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a father, a husband. I am teaching. I'm on some release time right now for my California Poet Laureate duties, but I
Mhm.
am I am teaching a little bit. The travel is real, that's for sure. I had over 100 events in 2023. So I'm on the road quite a bit, but I
Do you
think
get like
I say,
really good do you get good inspiration on the road? I mean, you're probably tired and stuff too, but I'm sure you see a lot.
yeah, I do, I do. I mean, I was just in Joshua Tree last weekend, and I'd never been there, and the amazing poet who brought me down there, Ruth Nolan, as we were saying goodbye. she said, "Oh, watch out for rattlesnakes." So just the fun, interesting flavors of each community, I'm always inspired by. I'm especially inspired these days by young people. I met a deaf rapper, a female deaf rapper who was like a sophomore in high school. So, you know, for me, inspiration is easy if I'm paying attention,
Hmm.
you know. I think inspiration can be positions of power and ego, but when I kind of level myself out, inspiration is everywhere. I mean, inspiration semantically or, etymologically means to breathe in, to inspire. So I'm always
Mm.
thinking about breath,
You're a yogi.
you know.
It
Well, I don't know. But
doesn't have to be the postures, the breath. And people could be doing
oh,
the postures and not thinking about the breath and not practicing.
yeah. I mean, some people used to ask me if I meditate, and I don't know that I've ever formally meditated, but I'm almost always, and sometimes it's more conscious than others, but I'm almost always mindful of my breath because I think it's directly connected to my ability to be present, regardless of how busy I am. A lot of people think, and I used to maybe think, oh, I could be more centered or I could be more, balanced or calm or able to write if I just shave off 10 minutes of commercials. And if I go a faster route to work, I can save 5 minutes. So they chisel up the day into minutes. But I saw this great TED talk by a woman who talks about mental health and wellness and time. And she said that when we love what we do and it loves us back, time works for us. I mean, I think some of the busiest people are also some of the most centered, and not always, of course.
Hmm.
But that's kind of how I've started thinking about time and busyness. So, you know, that's one way of answering it. The other way is to just say, yes, I've had moments where I'm on the road or another hotel and I just have
Yeah.
to ramp up the gratitude,
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. That really spoke to me. Yeah, I needed to hear that. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sure
Mm,
other people could hear that too.
mm,
And yeah, thank you.
mm.
So that's amazing. There's all this inspiration from people that you're meeting, the youth of today. Are there any poets or other literary figures that have deeply inspired your work or helped you through like pivotal moments in your life or yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the first that I read when I was young was Walt Whitman, and I still love Walt Whitman's work. Um, One of my favorite books is Lee Young Lee's book called The City in Which I Love You. Um, there's an essay by the great Audre Lorde that was originally a speech delivered in 1977 at the Chicago MLA conference, but your listeners might enjoy it. It's called The Transformation of Silence into Language and Action. And it's the essay in which Lorde describes her realizing how important it was for her voice to make its way into the world somehow. And that can be through poetry or dance or cooking or painting or whatever it might be. But Audre Lorde was formative for me. And more locally, just because I always like to boost and brag on some Fresno poets and writers whose work I love and inspires me. Definitely Juan Felipe Herrera. I love
Hmm.
the poems of Philip Levine. Connie Hale's poems are always moving for me. And people like Marisol Baca. There's so many. Maider Vang, David Campos. Our current Fresno Poet Laureate is a wonderful poet named Joseph Rios. So there are many, but those are some that come to mind. But if any of your listeners are looking for poets, I would just encourage them to surf around like you might surf streaming channels. And when you find one that speaks to you, just keep reading more of their work and then just keep going wherever it takes you. But there's so much great poetry out there.
There is. And I was going to kind of say this for the end, but we can mention it now that Fresno has a literary festival that happens once a year called LitHop. And the Lotus Room is a venue for that. There's lots of venues. And I believe you'll be a part of LitHop. I don't think you're reading in the Lotus Room this time, but yeah, did you want to like say anything about LitHop or maybe who you're excited to hear or and also share where you'll be so we know?
Sure, sure, sure. Thank you. So, yeah, I'm really grateful for your kindness, letting LitHop have events there. We like to use the Lotus Room, or we see the Lotus Room as our sort of central hub. So we'll set up a table there. We've had T-shirts and maps and different things like that. Um, I will be reading at 3 o'clock. I am reading this year, and I'm reading with some wonderful poets who will be writing about adoption and loss. So Julene Johnson is a Korean adoptee poet from Portland. She's coming down. Susan Ito is a Japanese American and white adoptee. And her memoir called I Would Meet You Anywhere was just a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award this year. So she's coming over from Oakland. And then Megan Espinor, who I believe is from Texas. So I'm reading at 3 o'clock. And, LitHop has this year about 140 writers of all genres, all ages. There are about 40 events from 12 o'clock to 5 o'clock at about 9 venues or maybe 10 venues throughout the Tower District. So it's all walkable. It's a fun day. There are a lot of people I'm looking forward to seeing. I mean, one of the problems, not a problem, it's one of the good challenges is to choose which one you want to go see,
I
because in every
know.
hour, there could be 3 or 4 or many that you want to go see. But there's so many. Brenna Woolmer is a poet and a writer who's new to Fresno, but whose work I really love. And so she's reading. Stephen Church is reading, who's also kind of an inspiration for me. Connie Hales is reading. Angela Chaidez Vincent has a new book she's reading. There's so many local writers. And so, yeah, people can go to our website. It's lithopfresno.org. And they can see who's reading. They can see when the readings are and where and sort of plan out their day. It's close to my heart. My wife, who's a wonderful writer, Lee Herrick, my wife and I co-founded LitHop in 2016 with some friends. So
I didn't know
we
that.
love to see the community out there. Yeah. It was a not lifelong, but, for probably 10 or 15 years, Kellee, I don't know if you're like this, but I had this idea and I would talk to my friends about it. 10 years later, we finally did it. But yeah, it's a fun
Heck
day.
yeah,
So
you
it's
just
October
played the
12th.
long game with that one.
Yeah.
Hung in with it. Well, I've definitely
Yeah.
very much enjoyed my experiences going to LitHop, and it's happening on October 12th. We'll make sure we share in the show notes as well the website, and we've shared the schedule, I know, through our platforms for what's happening in the Lotus Room already, and we have it kind of posted around the studio and stuff. And yeah, I listened to Brenna do some readings last year, and she's practiced yoga here. And
Oh,
yeah, we had a little like community bike
okay.
ride, and her and I
Oh,
got to
nice.
ride bikes and kind of chit chat a
Oh,
little bit.
good.
So yeah, but I am continually impressed by everyone I get to, you know, listen to and receive like the words and work, but I am continually just like awestruck by what's in Fresno, who is in
Yeah.
Fresno, and what they're doing. It's
Yeah.
incredible. And I don't think people outside of the writing community obviously like really understand like
Yeah.
how how we have really beautiful,
Hmm.
impactful writers here. And it
Yeah.
makes sense because uh there's a little bit of like a rough around the edge sort of factor, and well, there's a big polarity of Fresno,
Hmm.
and you can feel into the edges feel rough when I
Mm-hmm.
feel into like the energy of what, and I'm born and raised here, but
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely, um, it's got a lot of, I think, grist for the mill, if you will,
Yeah,
to live here.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think of it often as very gritty. I like that rough around the edges description. Um, yeah, and it makes for good writing. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Being a music person, I think of cities in the US that are known for its music, Seattle or Nashville or Austin or, these different cities that it just continues to kind of feed and fuel itself. And the writing here has felt like that to me. And one thing that I'm really proud of LitHop for is, we design it to be as accessible and open as possible. So you will have somebody like an author of 5 books who's won major awards reading right next to a college student, and I like that. We try to,
Hmm.
you know, I know de-boundary is not a word, but try to lower the intimidation factor so you can go to a reading at a coffee shop or something like that. Or and by the way, not that I'm recruiting or pressuring, certainly, but you mentioned you write or used to write. We're open to that too. So if you or any of your listeners find yourself wanting to propose something for next year,
Mm.
um, please feel free. And we'd love to have you. But yeah, we hope we can see people out there on the 12th. It's a fun day and the weather should be good. So we hope people will enjoy it.
Oh yeah. I'm very much looking forward to it, and I really do love that broad spectrum and the juxtaposition of listening and feeling one person's energy to the next, and I love that stuff.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, our manager Farron, who you've met, she is a really good writer. So I definitely
Hmm.
want to like nudge
Okay.
her to maybe
All
apply
right.
for next year.
Definitely. And the submission to read is pretty simple, straightforward, and we're very how can I put it? We're very open to people who want to read if they have some of their own work and they can put together a little paragraph description of the event. I think they would be received well. I'll just put it that way.
Cool. You're like,
Yeah.
shoot your shot.
Yeah.
Don't be worried.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I know we could just probably just like talk forever and ever. So I do want to kind of get into talking about In Praise of Late Wonder. The title is It Makes Me Feel. It's very
Mm.
evocative. Can you share the meaning behind it and what the readers can expect from the
Hmm.
new collection?
Sure. So the new book, In Praise of Late Wonder, is a new and selected collection, which means that there are selected poems from each of my first 3 books in this case. And then there's a pretty healthy amount of new poems. And the new poems are some of the most personal and also in some ways political poems that I've ever written related to my adoption. I've written a few over the years, but these are very personal. So it was a very difficult book to write, but probably the most rewarding. It just feels very liberating. And so I'm excited for people to read it. I've gotten some interesting and nice feedback so far. But that's really what the book is about. And the title, In Praise of Late Wonder, I struggled with the title for this book, and my publisher helped me, and we arrived at this one. I texted some close writer friends about 5 or 6 different titles I was thinking about, and they all liked this one, In Praise of Late Wonder. I mean, I first of all, I love the word and the idea and the feeling of praise.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, what could I do with that word and the title? Wonder, I think, is related to praise, but I think early on I lived in wonder subconsciously. I was just confused. And I would wonder about things, like
Yeah.
where am I and how do I get there and things
Hmm.
like that. Those questions, will I ever find love? Will I,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. So I've always been sort of curious, but now wonder as I see as more of an intentional way of being, where right when I think I might have the answer, I'll realize the importance of the other 100 things I don't know about. And so I'm very interested in that idea. And in praise of late wonder, I hope we all live to be 102, but chances are high that I won't. I'm in my early 50s, and I don't know if that's late or not, but I always want to try to be present. And really, at any time, I think wonder can be good, whether it's late or early. And then really the poem, it just sounded good. That might not be the most articulate or heady thing to say, but sometimes I think it can just come down to pleasure. It just sounds good to say.
Straight up.
So yeah, I kind of
I
like that
agree.
part of it too. Um, so yeah, I feel good about it. But I'm glad that you asked about that. I'm interested to hear. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there like a particular poem that holds like I know they're all significant to you, obviously, but is there one that really like has you? And would you be willing to share even like a little bit from it?
Yeah. Yeah. So they're all meaningful to me in some way or another, but maybe I'll read this one. It's kind of a prose like poem, and it's the last poem in that long section about my adoption. And it references my daughter, and I just like to say that she has given me permission to read this, so she knows I'm reading this. She's older now, but she's in middle school in this poem. So this is titled Stars. Every now and then I remember that I was born on the other side of the earth, and it makes sense that I love looking up at the stars. It's such a childish thing to do, like climbing trees, stomping in mud puddles, or building forts out of blankets. But there's some strange pull and simple satisfaction from looking at the stars after all these years. I wonder if a man my age in Korea has the same love. I wonder how the stars relate to a gravitational likelihood that I'll tell my daughter someday about the time in our backyard, swimming in the moonlight, and the world seemed perfect. Or the time I dropped her off at her middle school in Fresno, and before I drove off, she motioned for me to stop, fogged up the window with her breath, and wrote with her finger, "I love you, Dad," with a heart, and the world seemed perfect. That's what it is about the stars. Because they're so many millions of miles away and so still, the immediate chaos or confusion of our lives seems so minor. Even in the daylight, they're right there, imperceptible, but there. Something like faith or belief or the wild idea that a deep kind of joy is there for you, even if you have no idea where it is.
That made me emotional. It's really
Oh,
beautiful. Thank
good.
you.
Oh, thank you, Kellee. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
that speaks back to finding joy, like that foundational joy.
Yeah, yeah. And, I think it's not about violence or aggression, but to use the word, I think we have to fight for our joy. We have to
Yeah.
fight for allowing ourselves forgiveness of ourselves or allowing ourselves to see others fully being themselves. So, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I
mm,
yeah, I really, really love that. It reminds me of I was at a training like a couple months ago, and there was a woman who had, those bracelets that have like the little sayings or inspirational quotes or something,
Hmm.
and it's just said, "Do it ugly." And I was like, yeah, like
Yeah,
live,
absolutely.
and also the world isn't perfect, and but there are perfect moments if
Hmm.
we allow ourselves to receive it that way, and it's like
That's well
really
said.
definitely it's a permission, and
Hmm.
it's a choice and it's a permission. And
Hmm.
yeah, when things are tough, I don't know why it can be hard for me anyways to grant myself that ability to really receive the perfect moment. And it could be like 1 second of, yeah, like that little encounter with your daughter. I think I'm especially feeling it. I have a child in middle school. So,
Oh,
and her
yeah.
name is Star. So
Oh,
it's just,
really?
yeah.
It's
Um,
beautiful.
yeah. And there's of course things even within like mothering a middle schooler that can be challenging, but there are these little glimmers that might seem farther and few between, some of the attitude or like the whatever, trying to
Hmm.
individuate, which is great. But there are these really, really beautiful moments, and it might just be that she holds my hand for a second, and
Mm.
that really is, it just feels
Hmm.
like that is so perfect, and
Yep.
it only lasts a second. So sometimes
Yep.
I don't let myself like feel that or register that because it's going to go, but that your poem like inspires me to continue to like receive that, and those things
Mm.
have a way of adding up and contributing to the foundational joy.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I loved, and I have all my good energies now for your daughter. But I love what you said there. I think you said something like the world isn't perfect, but there are perfect moments in the world. That's really nicely put. Yeah. 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 You're a poet too, I think, at heart in some ways. But yeah, I like that.
Totally. Maybe I'll apply for next year. So
I hope, but I try not to be a pusher. You got to do this, you got to do that. But I would love that if you're feeling it and you want to. I would love that. That would be great. But
Mm.
yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thank you. And yeah, and that goes for anyone, listeners. If
Hmm.
I know some of you out there are writing in your journals, I see you at yoga. I see
Hmm.
you. So, yeah, this is an invitation, not to push anyone, but to empower you.
Hmm.
So, as I said, we're so honored to host your book launch at Tower Yoga in the Lotus Room. That's happening on October 18th. I think that's really cool that it's happening the weekend after LitHop. And can you give our listeners a preview of what they can expect from the event? Like, will there be a reading like you just did? Will there be signings, or can they purchase the
Hmm.
book there? Yeah,
Yes, yes, there will be books available, and I'll do a signing after the reading. And if people wanted to purchase one before the reading or down the road, they could go to leeherrick.com. But at the reading, I've got four wonderful folks that have agreed to read with me just in the last couple of days. So I'll be trying to post about this. But former Fresno Poet Laureate Marisol Baca is reading, and a colleague of mine, queer, black, feminist scholar, is reading, and she's starting to write some poetry, which is really exciting. So April Lewis is her name. She'll be reading. And then Stephen Church, who is an essayist and creative nonfiction writer, teaches at Fresno State. He'll be reading, so I'm very excited about that. And then a good friend of mine from UC Merced, who is an adoption studies scholar, not a poet, but he's an adoption studies scholar named Kit Myers. He's going to be reading from his forthcoming book. And I'm probably going to invite a student of mine to read as well. So, there might be wine or juice or tea, hopefully a good spirit in the room,
for
So,
sure.
yeah, if people can come on out if they'd like, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, I plan to be there. So, listeners, friends, you are more than welcome to join us there. It's in the Lotus Room, as I said, on October 18th. We have more information on the time and all that kind of stuff if you just look on Instagram, or you can check the flyers we have posted around both studio locations. And if there's any questions you have that Lee or I didn't get to, then just email us at hello@toweryogafresno.com and we can definitely get back to you. So it'll be, I think, a pretty intimate gathering and celebration in praise of late wonder. So definitely mark your calendars, and remember that LitHop is coming up on October 12th, and you can go to, did you say lithop.org?
It's lithopfresno.org. Mm-hmm.
Cool. And we'll put this stuff in the show notes too. And yeah, so anything else that you want to share before we sign off?
No, other than just to say I really admire what you do, Kellee. So thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you're welcome. Thank you. I'm also not a pusher, but I would love to have you in for a yoga class. So you're more than welcome to. We can talk off of
Oh my
the
gosh.
podcast, but it would
I'd
be
have to
great.
I'd have to work up my nerve. But if I ever do it, I know where I'm going. I'm going there.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. All right, listeners, thank you so much for your energy and for your time. And we hope to see you at LitHop and at the book launch and around. So until next time, thank you very much. Be well. Thanks again for listening in and joining our yoga community. If it so resonates, please share this episode with a friend. Remember, the inner light of awareness within me honors the inner light of awareness within you. Until next time, stay grounded, stay present, and keep flowing with grace.